Welcome to yet another episode for Delight, where we talk to creators and entrepreneurs all around the world with their experiments on delight. Today, I have a very special guest, somebody who has worked in multiple delighting brands like Yahoo and Intuit and Microsoft and Flipkart, and now my favorite Atlassian. We have Moinak, who joins us. He's the head of products at Atlassian, and super excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I'll jump straight into it, Monica. I think the theme for us always is to ask the most important question first to every single speaker. What is delight? Delight has different contexts to different people. In the consumer world, in the hospitality world, people talk about your favorite chocolates being delivered, all the way to remembering my last preferences of the hotel. And a lot of people call delight different things. In your context, what would you define as delight?
Let me take an example and maybe we go from there, right? So recently I was on a trip to Sydney and I stayed at Four Seasons. And I stay at Four Seasons every single time. Now, why is that, if I ask myself, right? There could be many, rational, tangible reasons. But what really surprised me this time was I walk into my room and I have this note lying there saying that, thank you for coming here again, Mr. Chatterjee, and along with that, this box of chocolates. Like, this is not part of like their breakfast, dinner, or any of their standard fare, right? This is just lying there. And it's very, personalized, address to me. It was a very good feeling. I think it brought a smile to my face after a very long flight, and that felt very good. So I think we measure a lot of metrics around like, adoption, engagement, and all of this, and we go a little in that direction when we measure NPS, but I feel delight is over and above, one notch above that NPS, right? And sometimes brands do a very good job of this, or sometimes brands just entirely ignore it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very good observation. I've had similar things. My recent experience where United Airlines sends me a very personalized video with my name inside it, and I know it's AI generated, nobody kind of manually crafted it, and it kind of showed me all the flights that I've taken, a nice little world map of all the things that I've done, as if I got promoted to this platinum membership. And little nudges like that, makes you feel special. Do you believe that in your example, the example that I just received and experienced, do you believe that personalization is synonymous to creating that delight, or do you think delight can happen even without personalization, just because it's been thought through in the experience life cycle?
Personalization, when it's addressed to you and your needs, always adds that extra edge. But delight by itself can happen even without that personalization. The best example I have for this is, unboxing an Apple product. It's just that overall unboxing feeling, like that smell. I don't know if they perfume it or whatever they do, but that feeling is amazing. You're not kind of trying to flip things over to take things out. They've got that little bit of a tab that you pull and it comes out, right? There's also delight around building products themselves. So for example, if you look at the Amazon e-reader, right, which is the Kindle, what you'll find is like back in the day when you had those, paper white Kindles, the buttons used to not just, go inward. The buttons used to go backwards as well. So you're lying down reading, you're kind of like, I can do both. You can press it inward or backward and it still works, which is fascinating, right?
Little things like that.
Yes.
Do you think delight is hence an outcome of good user experience design? Or do you think delight can be attributed to a lot of engineers who are building capabilities, but if they start thinking about some maybe unsolved problem, that they could also strike gold? Or do you think it's mostly user experience design for products that you've seen?
I think of late, at least how the industry is evolving, the way we build products, we start with a customer problem and then we go, solve it really well, and we measure metrics, and, most often we're looking at a lot of leading metrics, right? We also call them input metrics. The fun part is most of Delight actually moves output or lagging metrics. You know, these metrics, you're going to see them much later. Like the customer comes back, so repeats, right? Or an NPS score that is moving up over time. So what happens is a lot of creators don't keep this front and center. It's kind of an afterthought today. But to your question, like where does it originate from? I think it's an understanding of the customer at a very slim level, which means it's not a big problem. It's not the everyday problem, because that would be the product, right? If you didn't solve it, the product wouldn't sell. But it's that slice of problems that don't show up, the ones that the customer doesn't complain about that often, right? Another example, just to drive home the point, is in any e-commerce company, there's this return window, right? Now, let's say you're a very loyal customer. You spend a lot on that platform. And you've made this call to return the product for whatever reason after the return period is over. Now, imagine the situation where the customer support calls you and actually accepts that return. Now, would this really show up as a pain point across a lot of the base? Probably not, like when you're talking hundreds of millions of users. But if a product manager is probably paying attention to those minor blips, they could use that for Delight.
Absolutely. And this is not an after fact that you can just accidentally get into Delight. Like this example, somebody would have had to plan that and design in their service design to say it's okay. Yes, there's a financial implication of taking something beyond 30 days, 45 days, or outside of the window. Somebody would have had to make the judicious call to bake design in their life cycle of feature streams and capabilities, right? So, very interesting.
So I recommend highly that as we prioritize, we don't just prioritize for solving the problem, we also prioritize a little bit of our resources, whether it's in terms of the financial modeling, as you mentioned, or in terms of the engineering work that is required. We need to factor in that delight.
Do you think that's a first version versus second version versus fifth version thing to do? A lot of people use these words like MVP and things like that. What's your take? Like when is the right time to do this?
Now is the right time. So we don't like. I'm actually against the term MVP, and the reason behind it is not that MVP is wrong. It's just the interpretation. So. It's like if you can't build a car, build a very good cycle, a delightful cycle. So people don't understand the term properly, which is why we've been using this term minimum lovable product, right? So I believe delight needs to be baked in from day one.
Got it.
You need to know what you are doing explicitly to delight the customer. What is it over and above that 80 or 90% pain point that you're solving?
And every creator, whether you're a product manager or an entrepreneur or a service designer, but every creator needs to think through day one, is kind of what you're saying. Any experiments that you've done that you thought were, hey, this was going to be a rock star capability and a candidate for delight, and then it kind of, didn't delight, and vice versa, maybe some that you didn't expect but became all of a sudden delighting, as part of your day-to-day work. Moinak, any experiments that you've done more recently where you thought something was going to be very delightful, you kind of spent a lot of time engineering it in your capabilities, at Atlassian or otherwise, and didn't quite delight for whatever reason. And sometimes you thought, well, this is a nice little feature here, nobody's going to care, and all of a sudden that became the delighting thing. Any experiments you want to share with us?
As a product manager, I think one of the key things that I tell my team, as well as like something that I've grown up with, is most of the experiments are going to fail. So it's the successes are few and far between, and those are the you need to derive your happiness out of those few. So one particular example that comes to mind was we were building this product for. So you could basically install this app on your phone and drive around, and it would track every drive that you took. Now, why is this important? Is because in the United States, you can claim tax deductions against it if you're driving for business. So what the United States government expects is that you classify these drives as personal or business. Now the trouble is, most people don't do it very diligently.
Yeah.
So they're sitting at the end of the month,
Yeah.
or worse still, at the end of a quarter, and they're looking at all of these drives,
right.
and they're wondering like, hey, which one was
Yeah,
business, which
yeah,
one was
yeah.
personal. And what we were noticing was people were going individually, clicking each
Yeah.
drive and trying to, classify it. So we said, hey, you know what? Let's give them a way to do this in bulk, right? And fun part, like everyone was asking for it. It was a feature that was being asked for. So we threw in an extra delight into it, right? We said that, hey, you know what? We'll also give you this, tagging that, hey, this is the places that you went to, right? So we made it a little bit more delightful and all of that. Guess what? No one used it. They were still going individually, clicking that drive,
That's right.
classifying it.
They may not even know that this thing exists, right? But it's also user training on
Exactly. So it was a failed experiment, and then we realized that, hey, you know what exactly was going wrong, right? We had to talk to the customers, and we soon realized that what was happening was they had different businesses. They were very often Uber drivers, right? So they can claim this between their drives. And so it was all random. Like there was no way they could find a pattern to bulk classify these drives, right? It was an individual task. So there was no point in making it easier in terms of
So
bulk.
we were thinking too much in terms of capability, but really from a consumer and day in life of how they would use it, certainly didn't work out.
Didn't
as
work
much.
out.
Yeah, very interesting. That happens. Now, Atlassian is known for building delighting products. What is your broad advice to all creators looking at this and saying, okay, I'm convinced that I need to think about delight upfront. I'm convinced that the impact of delight is high in terms of NPS, additional revenue, recurring customers, right? The repeat intimacy. But how do I go about that? What do I need to do tomorrow to start building my own journey in my own product or my own service? Any advice for creators around the world?
One thing which does come to mind on how to unearth these little nuggets is having customer interviews that are quite open-ended. I think we tend to, because of the paucity of time, we tend to have this urgency driving everything, and we need to finish the customer interviews in order to build the requirements, and in order to then take it to execution, etc. So in Atlassian, we do something very interesting. We co-develop products with our customers, which is I think a very interesting concept. So for many of our new groundbreaking products, we are actually developing it with customers. And the key ingredient there is to listen to customers very open-endedly, like let them speak. If you're very focused on, hey, I need to get this out, like I need to understand your pain point and how to solve it, you will not get those nuggets. Like they'll randomly complain about something, or better still, like something we used to do at Intuit is watch them use your product.
Absolutely.
Like go to their home in their work setting, use the product. So one of my mentors used to always tell me, like if you're building, let's say, a luggage bag or a baggage product, if you are watching that product in isolation sitting at home, you're not going to build the good one. You need to see the person using it at the airport with all the challenges that they're facing, right? The wheel gets stuck. They can't put it on the escalator when they're going down.
They
and
don't
all of
even
these
know.
small problems.
You ask them, they don't even themselves know that they have a problem in certain things, right? So observation is the only way you're going to infer. A lot of design partners, as a lot of companies do this program called the Design Partner Program. Similar to that? Is that kind of?
Yeah. So we used to work very closely with IDEO at one point, and IDEO does this phenomenally well.
Got it.
Like it's an iconic design company, and they really understand the user. Those are the kind of insights that you will not get through a normal customer interview.
Awesome. Well, that's 20 years of building delight with Moinak, and we hopefully got a lot of exciting tips and tricks that each one of us can use in our own journeys. So thank you for
Thank you so much
joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Super.